This lesson is about one of the most emotionally loaded topics in estate planning: marriage, blended families, and the difference between what feels fair and what's actually safe. Because when families blend, second marriages, stepchildren, yours, mine, and ours, the default plan that works fine for many first marriages can fail spectacularly. Here's the core tension. If your family looks like a 1950s sitcom, where everyone agrees on everything, planning is often straightforward. But for many of us, life is more like a complex puzzle. You might be on a second or third marriage. You may have children from a previous relationship, and perhaps your current spouse has their own children as well. This mix and match reality can complicate your plan, but it also gives it meaning. It can also introduce a major risk known as the accidental disinheritance. Imagine this. You and your current spouse have a happy marriage. You want them to be cared for if you pass away first, so you leave everything to them. However, if your spouse then passes away without a specific plan for your children, state law or their own will could move your life's work entirely to their children or even a new spouse. Your own children could be left with nothing but old photos, while your assets fund the lives of people you barely know. This isn't about bad intentions. It's about ownership rules doing exactly what they're designed to do. So let's define the problem clearly. If assets pass outright to the surviving spouse typically becomes the full owner, which means they can spend it, gift it, redirect it, leave it to someone else, get influenced by someone else, or lose it in divorce, creditors, or long-term care costs. So if your goal is, I want my spouse cared for, and whatever is left goes to my children, you often need a trust structure that creates that outcome. Today, we are going to look at specialized trust tools that allow you to balance being a provider for your spouse and a protector for your children at the same time. The first marital tool is the marital deduction trust. This is often used when a couple is on their first marriage and they agree completely on who should inherit later. It allows you to leave assets to your spouse tax-free and postpones any estate tax until the second spouse passes away. The key feature here is flexibility. In this trust, your spouse could change the beneficiaries later. For example, if one child becomes very wealthy while another faces a medical crisis, your spouse could adjust the portions to help where it's needed most. This wait-and-see approach can be a great gift if you trust that your spouse's goals will always align with yours. The next two tools are the QTIP trust and bypass trusts. At first glance, QTIP trusts and bypass trusts look almost identical, and if they cause some confusion, that's completely normal, because structurally, they often do the same things, which are, they both can provide income to a surviving spouse, they both can protect assets for children from a prior marriage, and they both can keep assets out of probate. But here's the key idea that clears up the confusion. A QTIP trust is about control. A bypass trust is about separation. Once you understand that, everything else starts to make sense. Let's start with the QTIP trust. QTIP actually stands for Qualified Terminable Interest Property. It qualifies for special tax treatment, and the interest of the spouse eventually terminates. A QTIP trust is designed for one main purpose: to take care of your spouse for the rest of their life, while making sure you decide where the assets go after your spouse passes away. A simple way to think about a QTIP trust is that you're loaning your estate to your spouse for their lifetime. While your spouse is alive, the trust must provide them with income. The trust can also be written to pay for things like medical care or living expenses if needed. So from the spouse's point of view, life feels financially secure. But here's the superpower of a QTIP trust. Your spouse does not get to decide what happens to the trust or its assets after they're gone. That decision is made by you, the first spouse to die. So a QTIP trust can say, my spouse is fully supported for life, and when they pass away, whatever is left goes to my children from my first marriage. Your spouse can't change that plan. They can't redirect the assets, and they can't cut your children out later. That's why QTIP trusts are so commonly used in second marriages. They're the trust version of saying, I love you and I will take care of you, but I also need boundaries. Now compare that to what happens if everything is left outright to a spouse. If assets go directly to your spouse with no trust, they own them. And because they own them, they can change where those assets go later. They could remarry, they could update their estate plan, and your children may end up with far less than you intended. A QTIP trust removes that risk by locking in the after my spouse dies plan from the beginning. Now let's talk about the bypass trust. At first glance, a bypass trust can look very similar. The surviving spouse may still benefit from it, and the first spouse still decides who gets whatever is left. But the reason a bypass trust exists is different. A bypass trust is about keeping assets legally separate from the surviving spouse. When the first spouse dies, assets are placed into the bypass trust in a way that allows the surviving spouse to benefit, but without those assets ever becoming the spouse's property. That separation matters for estate tax purposes. For some families, it preserves estate tax planning. The assets, and any growth after the first death, are not counted as part of the surviving spouse's estate later on. A QTIP trust, in comparison, places the assets in the surviving spouse's estate. But for many families, especially blended families, the more important reason is destination control. A bypass trust allows the first spouse to say, my spouse can benefit during their lifetime. but these assets are never truly theirs, and they go exactly where I've directed after my spouse passes. So how does the surviving spouse benefit from a bypass trust? Typically, the spouse can receive income from the trust. The trust may also allow distributions of principal under certain guidelines, often for health, education, maintenance, or support. In some cases, the spouse can even serve as trustee. But there are limits, and those limits are the entire point. If the surviving spouse had unlimited control over the trust assets, then for legal and tax purposes, the trust would effectively become theirs, and the protection you were trying to build would disappear. So a bypass trust is about balance. It supports the spouse, but it keeps the assets legally separate, and it protects the remainder for the people you choose. Here's the simplest way to remember the difference. A QTIP trust says, this is my spouse's for life, but I control where it ends up. A bypass trust says, this isn't really my spouse's property, even though they can benefit from it. Same outward result, different legal logic, different tax treatment, and that's why both tools still exist, even though they may look identical on the surface. Now, when talking about families, there's always an important principle to discuss. What is fair versus what is equal? Many people feel a deep pressure to divide everything exactly down the middle, but in a blended family or complex estate, equal may not actually be fair. For example, suppose you have 2 children. One has worked in the family business for 20 years, while the other pursued a career that led them across the country. Leaving the business to both equally could create a situation where the local child does all the work while the other child collects half the profits. A fair roadmap might involve leaving the business to the first child and using a life insurance policy or a different set of assets to provide an equivalent value to the second. Families add complexity to life, hopefully along with the joy of familial relations. By watching this video today, you have already gained a massive advantage. You now understand that you don't have to choose between your spouse and your children. You know that different marital trusts could provide for a spouse's life while protecting a child's legacy. You understand that fairness is about matching the right assets to the right people. If you're ready for a small immediate step, I invite you to perform a beneficiary audit. Look at your current family structure. Do you have children from a prior marriage? Does your spouse? Just identifying these mix and match points in your notes is the first step toward choosing the right trust tool. For those who would like to explore additional trust structures, check out the bonus material in the MyEstateKit app. You are building a roadmap that respects your relationships and protects your life's work. Let's keep moving forward together.